Good morning. It's springtime in Australia and we're going to do a bit of seed planting. So I'm going to start off with what equipment you need. You may want a pair of gloves. These are specific gardening gloves, but a pair of household gloves will do. I use an old kitchen item, a sieve, and tweezers. Sometimes a good idea if the seeds are big enough to handle with tweezers. And it's a good idea to get specific potting mix. I'm going to put my gloves on now because it should have better drainage and smaller particles so that the seeds don't get lost amongst big particles. The other thing you will need if you're in a cooler climate like I am is a heat mat, because the best way to grow seeds is to have bottom heat and moisture. They're the two essential items to germinate seeds to best conditions, I should say. I'm going to use a self-watering pot because sometimes I may go away for a few days, and this will make sure that the seeds are kept watered. So this works by you put a wick through the holes and the wick absorbs the water up from a reservoir at the bottom, so that way you can't forget to water. Although if you're going to put this on the heat mat, that's not going to be a very good idea. This is more for when the seeds get bigger, when the seedlings get bigger, I should say. Another way to sow them is direct into a tray, and that way you don't have to transplant the seedlings when they're small and possibly damage them. They can stay in here longer, but you may have to plant the misses, as they say. That's when the seedlings don't germinate, the seeds don't germinate. And of course, last of all, you want some seeds. I'm going to plant I've got some cucumbers and some tomatoes. What else have I got? Some marigolds and more tomatoes. I like the cherry tomatoes. These are the same, so we can do two different methods with the seedlings. So first of all, we're going to the other thing of course you need, if you're going to open a bag, these are my Felco secateurs, which shouldn't really be used for cutting plastic, but I think one time is okay. Felco are the legendary brand for gardeners, for pruning. This isn't a product placement. And as you see, this soil is quite fine, so the seeds aren't going to get lost in that. I think we'll start with this tray. So we'll just put this in and press it down as you go. If you leave it too loose, it's just going to collapse when you water it. This is already quite moist, which is good. And there's a worm. It's supposed to be, this mix is supposed to be sterile. I don't know how the worm got in. That is a thing, another reason for choosing a specific seed mix is that it should be sterile. And limits the amount of diseases and fungi that the seeds get. So I'm just pressing this down lightly. And now it's ready to plant seeds. In this case, I think I'll just do them individually with probably the tweezers. Certainly the cucumber seeds will be big enough for tweezers. There's the cucumber. Tomato seeds are a bit smaller, so I'll see how I go with those. Now I don't really need a lot of cucumbers because they're going to have to grow in the greenhouse because we don't have a very warm climate where I am. Now these are interesting. They're blue seeds, which means they've been treated with a fungicide. And the tomatoes seeds, they'll be a fraction of the size of the cucumber seeds. So now there's two ways. This is the quite fiddly individual way of planting them, which I'm going to do. Already I'm spilling some onto the soil, but that's fine. So I've got these surgical tweezers, which I use for a variety of things in the garden. I'm not sure they'll be too big for the... So the cucumber, we can just put them like that, one by one. And the tomatoes, I'm going to do up the other end. They'll actually pick up like sort of magnetic. You can just tap the stick or whatever on, and then as you put the seeds in, just firm the soil around. So I'm going to put 2 in each spot. Now I'll just fast forward a bit on this. So we're nearly finished. I've got a little container of water just to make them stick to the tweezers, and it's not... I wouldn't normally plant them individually, but this is, if you've got the time and patience, this is a good way to do it. And I'm putting 2 in each slot, 2 seedlings, and what this and I'll go back and use the leftovers. If you got 2, then you just pull out the weakest one, or maybe only one will germinate, so you're covered. Okay, that's those in tomatoes, and the next thing to do is to give them a bit of water. You can either use a sprayer or a can with a rose on it. I don't want to get too much water on here, so I'll put these down here to drain, and we'll come back to those later. Now the other method is to plant in a pot. Now because I don't have a lot of seed mixture, I'm going to fill the pot with any old soil at the bottom. Now this is, as I might have mentioned, a self-watering pot. It's got wicks, We're not going to use the self-watering aspect straight away. I'm just going to get some older soil to put in the bottom, because there's no point in putting the expensive seed mixture to fill the pot, because the seedlings' roots will only go down maybe halfway down this pot before we need to transplant them. So I've got some ordinary potting mix here. As you see, it's quite coarse. So we're going to put that in the bottom. It's not a very good quality potting mix. I don't think it'll drain very well, which is okay for these seedlings. Actually, I'm going to put about two-thirds of just the normal soil, or potting mix they call it, but it's not really a very good potting mix because it doesn't have a lot of drainage in it. Then we fill up with seed mix, give it a few taps. Now we want that nice and level and without big holes in it for the seeds to fall down, so I'll just use this to compress it down a bit. Now you see we've got a nice firm flat surface. Now this way is a lot quicker. We take our seeds, and by the way, I'm not sponsored by Dr. Brown. I don't know who Dr. Brown is or what. Always, when you do buy seeds, it's a good idea to check the date. These are expire at August 28 rather. So open up your seed packet. Now here's the way to sprinkle your seeds evenly. I wouldn't take them, and just use a piece of paper. This is the only one here. So I'll just empty them out on a piece of paper. Oh, that's the empty packet. Empty them out on a... They're cucumbers. Where's the packet gone? Oh, here it is. Empty, the third time lucky. Empty them out on a piece of paper. And you'll find they stick into the... They'll stick in the seed packet. I'll just check if there's any others in the other packet. Waste not, want not. See, there's a couple hiding in the corner there. Alright, once they're on the paper, you just fold it over and tap. Just tap the paper and just space them evenly. I think we can certainly fit all of these in here. If you get some too close together, you can go back and separate them out. Okay, and this is pretty good spacing, but there's a couple that are a bit close. Over here, a bit close. Probably easier to do it with my fingers. Ah, that'll do. Right, next thing to do, you got to cover them, and that's where the secret weapon comes in. If I can find that one. I'll put on some gloves. Let's go around the other side. So it's a good idea to firm them in first, although they're not really doing much when I do that. Make sure they don't stick onto your finger. Then you just put some soil, some of the polymix in your sieve. This is a little bit damp, so it's quite hard to get it through the sieve. It's better if the soil's a bit drier. Not really going. It's going. You just want to cover them up. That wasn't really going very well through the sieve, so I finished up just sprinkling it on with my hands. Then press down again with a flat surface to make sure the seeds aren't, well, the seeds shouldn't actually be showing. There's a couple showing, so they shouldn't stick to the bottom, but just check if you've got a few seeds stuck to the bottom. And you got a nice surface there. I'll give that a little water. And lastly, the best, you can either put them in a plastic tent using a plastic bag, or today I'm just going to cover them like this with some glad wrap, cling wrap, and you could, I haven't got elastic bands with me, but you could put an elastic around that, maybe not, and cover that with, most seeds will germinate in the dark, so they need usually darkness, moisture and warmth. So we're going to cover them like that then, and that can be watered as well. Just and then we've got the other tray. We're going to cover that. The same way. Just make sure that you keep the moisture in, and it's obviously going to be a high humidity. So I did work on several nurseries as an apprentice, and I also did study for a certificate in horticulture and achieved a certificate in horticulture in England, but that was more than 40 years ago. I think we'll put another piece on that. I think a plastic bag's probably easier. Recycle a plastic bag. And then lastly, had to pause it there because the neighbour was talking to her dog. Lastly, we put them on I've washed down the table. Lastly, we just put them on a heat mat, which these two should just fit, and come back in about 10 days. So if you want to see them in 10 days, give me a like, and preferably subscribe as well. And I'll see you in 10 days.